So today we're going to go over the wrist tape job that I showed you guys during the first session that we had. And basically, wrist tape job, a lot of times you just see people put wrist tape just right around the wrist, but there is a tape job that will prevent wrist hyperextension, which is the most common mechanism of injury for when somebody falls out on an outstretched arm. And then you could also tape something that will prevent hyperflexion. You don't see that as much just because the mechanism isn't as common. But today we'll do the hyperextension injury. So basically you're just going to position the athlete in front of you here. And a lot of times I'll tell the athlete just kind of keep their hands just kind of in my stomach area, just so the hand, and it just kind of prevents the hand from moving around, and it's a lot easier to do when you're taping. So pre-wrap or power flex, basically you're going to take the pre-wrap about, I wouldn't say halfway down, a little bit less than halfway down the forearm, because you're going to need anchors. And sometimes you'll see this tape job accompanied with a thumb tape job. And you're going to go through the hand. Okay. Just like any other tape job, we're going to use the white Johnson & Johnson. You can use other tape if you need it to be more protective, or if you want to allow a little bit more movement. So you're going to start with a couple anchors here. The anchors are probably going to depend on how big the person's wrist is. Obviously somebody who has a longer arm is going to have a longer wrist. So you go anchors proximally, and then we're also going to go an anchor distally through the hand there. So you guys see that? Okay. Now the next part is basically the most important part of the tape job, is the way the injury was, what happened with the person. So like we said, we're going to go for a hyperextension injury. So when you have a hyperextension injury, you want to make sure you prevent hyperextension. So we're going to create a fan with the white tape, and depending on how bad the injury is depending on how many fans you need. But basically what you're going to do is you're going to take a measurement from the two anchors, the top of the anchor proximally, and then the anchor that's in the hand. And you're going to make it a little bit shorter than what you measure normally, because you're going to have to change the angle of the wrist, and then once you do that, that's going to make your tape longer. So basically what you do here, when I said you make a fan, you're just going to kind of crisscross tape, and what that does is just increases the strength of the tape. Okay, so that's going to be our first fan. Now, like I said, we're going to prevent hyperextension. So what we're going to do is we're going to bring the wrist into flexion a little bit. Does that make sense to everybody? Okay, you bring it into flexion. Now I don't want to go like this. I don't want to bring it, because obviously if I tape somebody like that, that's not functional. They're not going to be able to do very much. So I want to bring them in just enough so that when the tape job is done, it's functional for them to use. Now what you want to do is you want to anchor down this fan distally first, because that allows you to pull proximally and pull into that wrist flexion. You guys see that? If I put this on first and then put this down, I'm going to kind of negate that flexion that I need. So basically I'm going to go like that there, and then anchor that down there. And like I said, depending on how severe the injury is, depends on how many of these you need. Usually I'll recommend 2, but so if you were to do 2, you would just make another fan like that and put it right on top. That just makes this a little stronger. But for today's purposes, I'm just gonna stick with 1. And then this here, just like any other tape job, you're gonna close this up. So you want to make sure you have no loose ends on both sides. Cover there, and then I'm just gonna have him hold his All right. And that's your wrist job for hyperextension. You always want to check to make sure that it's not too tight for them. So you could ask them. You could also check your capillary refill just like you do with the thumb and stuff. And then I'll just ask the athletes to say, hey, let me see you go into extension there. And as you can see, go ahead and go back. No, go up and, there you go. As you can see, he's going to be able to get into some extension, but he's not able to go into full hyperextension, which initially caused the injury. The same tape job can be done for hyperflexion. Like I said, the only difference to that is the fans, instead of going on the palmar side, they go on the dorsal side of the hand. And then instead of pulling into flexion, you're going to pull into hyperextension. Make sense?